Welcome, dear listener, to another gently glowing instalment of holiday history, where the cold winds of winter soften into candlelight, and the stories of the past settle around us like a warm woolen blanket. Tonight, we open a door that has been closed for a very long time. A door that leads not simply into Christmas as we know it today, but into a season that once stretched far beyond a single day. A season filled with merriment, feasting, song, mischief, reverence, and winter magic. A season nearly forgotten in our modern rush toward December 25th. Our story tonight is called The 12 Days of Christmas, the Lost Festival Season. We all know the carol. The partridge in the pear tree, the turtle doves, the French hens, the calling birds, the golden rings, and everything that follows. Many of us have stumbled our way through the verses, laughed at its length, or wondered what any of it has to do with Christmas at all. But the truth is far more surprising. For most of history, Christmas did not end on December 25th. It began on December 25th. The true celebration, the season of joy and community and tradition, lasted for 12 full days and nights, ending on the day known as Epiphany. For centuries, these 12 days shaped the rhythm of winter life, dictated the social calendar, and offered warmth in the darkest stretch of the year. Yet today, most of us hardly notice that they exist. Before we step deeper into this forgotten winter, we invite you to take part in a tradition here on Holiday History. Please take a moment and comment where in the world you are listening from tonight. Whether you are tucked beneath blankets in a snow-covered northern town, relaxing on a quiet farmstead under wide and frosty skies, sitting beside a crackling fire in a mountain cabin, or listening from a place where winter never comes and flowers bloom year-round, we love to see how far our storytelling travels. Your comments weave together a map of our listening family, and it is a joy to watch it grow. Now, settle in. Let the present moment soften. Let the past drift in like snowflakes against an old window pane. And imagine a time when winter was not dominated by shopping, countdowns, and frantic preparation, but by celebration, rest, companionship, and wonder. Part 1. Winter before Christmas became December. To understand the 12 days, we must first imagine a world where December looked nothing like the holiday-filled month we know today. In medieval Europe, early winter was a season of scarcity and stillness. The harvest had long since been gathered. The cold had set in. The days were short and the nights impossibly long. Livestock was often culled because there was not enough feed to carry every animal through the winter. Food stores had to last. People lived with the knowledge that winter was something to survive. In that older world, the weeks leading up to Christmas were not filled with parties, music, sparkling decorations, and festive meals. Instead, they were part of a season called Advent. Advent was a time of fasting, restraint, reflection, and anticipation. It was quiet. It was subdued. It was the opposite of what December has become for us today. There were no holiday markets, no school pageants, no office parties, no family gatherings overflowing with sweets and cheerful noise. Then, suddenly, everything changed. On Christmas Day, the fast ended. The mood shifted. The season of celebration began. From December 25th through January 6th, the world turned festive and alive. The hardship of winter was softened by companionship. Work slowed and sometimes ceased entirely. Games were played. Visitors arrived. Ale was poured. Music and storytelling filled the air. The dark of winter became a backdrop for warmth, connection, and tradition. This reversal feels astonishing to us now. Today, Christmas is the crescendo, the finish line, the culmination of weeks of preparation. But for centuries, it was only the beginning. The 12 days that followed were the heart of the holiday season. They offered something modern life rarely does: a space to breathe, to rest, to enjoy, and to gather without hurry. Part 2. Why 12? The sacred, the practical, and the ancient. The 12 days did not arise by accident. The number 12 has been woven into human life and symbolism since ancient times. There are 12 months in the year, 12 constellations marking the zodiac, 12 hours used to divide night and day, and in many traditions, 12 was seen as a number of completion and cosmic order. When Christianity shaped its liturgical calendar, the 12 days between the birth of Christ and the arrival of the Magi formed a meaningful span. The Nativity marked the beginning, and Epiphany marked the revelation of Christ to the world. The season between the two became a bridge between joy and recognition, celebration and meaning. But underneath this Christian structure lay older layers. In Rome, the festival of Saturnalia took place near the winter solstice and lasted for days. It was a time of feasting, gift-giving, reversal of social roles, and joyful disorder. In the Norse world, Yule was celebrated with fires, storytelling, drinking, sacrifice, and communal gathering across multiple nights. The darkest time of the year called for light, warmth, and togetherness, and cultures rising long before Christianity answered that need. Rather than erase these ancient customs, the early church adopted, adapted, and reshaped them. The result was a season that blended sacred observance with inherited memory. It was a season that reflected agricultural rhythms, spiritual symbolism, and human longing for warmth and meaning in winter. The 12 days carried all of this forward. They were holy and hearty, reverent and rowdy, contemplative and exuberant. They allowed people to feel that life still held joy, even in the coldest and most difficult time of the year. Part 3. Misrule, Merriment, and Upside-Down Worlds. One of the most enchanting and surprising features of the 12 days was the tradition known as Misrule. Misrule was a ritualized inversion of social order, a seasonal upturning of hierarchy, a playful loosening of the rigid structure that governed everyday life. In many places, a mock king or queen was chosen. Sometimes it was a servant, sometimes a child, sometimes the village fool. This figure presided over games, revelry, humour, and light-hearted chaos. The powerful were gently mocked. The lowly were elevated, if only symbolically. Servants were served by masters. Children led parades. Community leaders were expected to laugh at jokes made at their expense. This was not rebellion. It was relief. A society built on strict hierarchy needed a release valve, and Misrule offered it. For a brief time, people could laugh at the structures that governed them. They could acknowledge the absurdity of life, the fragility of authority, and the shared humanity beneath rank and role. When the season ended, order returned, but it returned renewed. The festival had allowed tension to dissolve through joy. Communities emerged stronger because they had laughed together. Part 4. Wassailing, Orchards, and Winter Blessings. While much of the 12 days took place around hearths and feasting tables, some traditions belonged to the winter night itself. Wassailing was one of the most beloved customs, and it occurred in two distinct forms. The first was house-to-house wassailing. Groups of neighbours travelled through villages singing to households, offering blessings for health and prosperity, and in return receiving spiced ale, coins, small gifts, or a place by the fire. This tradition strengthened community bonds, ensured that no one felt isolated in winter, and filled the night with music. The second form was orchard wassailing, especially in regions where apples were central to agriculture. People gathered in orchards to wake the trees from winter slumber and encourage a fruitful harvest in the coming year. They sang songs to the branches, poured cider at the roots, hung toast soaked in cider from the limbs, and banged pots or fired guns to frighten away harmful spirits. It was part agricultural wisdom, part superstition, part celebration, and part prayer. Both forms of wassailing reflected a belief that winter required active warming through fellowship. The cold was not simply endured, it was answered. The night was not a void. It was a place for song, laughter, and blessing. Part 5. Feasts, Games, Yule Logs, and Midwinter Magic. Though Christmas gained religious significance, the memory of Yule lingered within the 12 days. Across Europe, households brought evergreen boughs indoors, decorating spaces with holly, ivy, and fir. These greens symbolized endurance, survival, and the promise that life continued even in the heart of winter. A massive Yule log, often large enough that several men were needed to drag it into the hall, was lit on Christmas and kept burning for days. Its flames represented protection, good fortune, and the warmth needed to carry families through the season. Some traditions held that the remains of the log should be saved to start the following year's fire, binding one winter to the next. Feasting filled the season. Tables groaned beneath roasted meats, spiced pies, dried fruit, sugared almonds, nuts, puddings, mulled wine, and steaming ale. These foods were not everyday fare. They were celebratory, rich, and comforting. They turned winter into a time of abundance rather than deprivation. Games filled the hours as well. Blind man's buff, cards, dice, riddles, story contests, and mumming plays offered amusement and social bonding. Masked performers staged comic dramas in village squares and great halls alike. Even the poor, at least in principle, were invited to share hospitality. The 12 days created a world where winter became a shared experience rather than an isolating one. It belonged to everyone. Part 6. The Carol That Remembers What We Forgot. With this understanding, the familiar carol. The 12 days of Christmas becomes something different. Most people assume the song counts down to Christmas, but traditionally, the first day of Christmas was Christmas Day itself. The song reflects a world that still recognized the 12 days as a living season. Scholars debate its origins. Some believe it came from a French memory game. Others suggest it was simply a cumulative song meant to grow more amusing and difficult verse by verse. Some have proposed elaborate symbolic meanings, assigning Christian allegory to each gift. But these interpretations are modern and imaginative rather than historical. More likely, the song was exactly what it appears to be: playful, humorous, abundant, and slightly absurd. A perfect reflection of a season where joy grew as the days unfolded, where gifts were exchanged not all at once, but across nearly 2 weeks, and where the spirit of celebration was cumulative. Part 7. Twelfth Night and the Coming of Kings. The festival reached its peak on the 12th night, January 5th. Twelfth Night was a grand occasion, marked by plays, dancing, masquerades, and the crowning of kings and queens chosen by hidden tokens baked into cakes. A bean might designate the king, a pea the queen, or other charms might assign roles, fortunes, or humorous fates. Shakespeare captured the spirit of this night in his play Twelfth Night, which centres on disguise, comedy, mistaken identity, and festive confusion. The themes were not random. They reflected the atmosphere of the night itself, the joyful blurring of reality, role, and expectation. The next day, January 6th, was Epiphany, marking the arrival of the Magi. In many countries, Epiphany, not Christmas, was the day of gift-giving. Children waited not for Santa Claus, but for the three kings. In places like Spain, Mexico, and much of Latin America, this remains true today. In Italy, a figure called La Befana brought sweets to children. In other regions, star singers travelled from home to home, reenacting the journey of the Magi and receiving treats in return. Christmas trees were kept up until Epiphany, and in some traditions, taking them down earlier was considered unlucky. The festival ended not with exhaustion, but with fulfillment. Part 8. How the 12 days disappeared. So what happened to this long and lively season? Why do we no longer celebrate the 12 days? History offers several answers. Puritans in England and America sought to suppress Christmas entirely, viewing it as wasteful, disorderly, and too closely connected to pagan tradition. Industrialization brought work schedules that did not allow for extended winter holidays. Urban living reduced communal celebration. The Victorian era reshaped Christmas into a domestic, family-centered holiday focused on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. The rise of modern commerce pushed celebration earlier and earlier into December, extending the shopping season while shrinking the festive one. By the 20th century, the 12 days had faded from common memory. They survived only in church calendars, scattered customs, and the echo of a song whose meaning most people no longer recognized. Yet the season never fully vanished. In parts of Europe, South America, and Orthodox traditions, it remains alive. Epiphany parades still march through streets. King cakes are still baked and shared. Stars are still carried from house to house. And in some homes, trees still glow until the 6th day of January. The old season lingers quietly, waiting for those who remember. As our story comes to rest like snow settling on a quiet village road, we are left with a gentle realization. Christmas used to be the beginning, not the end. The old rhythm encouraged rest after joy, companionship after preparation, warmth after the coldest night of the year. And perhaps, even in our modern lives, we can reclaim a little of that forgotten wisdom. Maybe by letting the tree glow a few days longer. Maybe by lingering over a shared meal. Maybe by writing a letter of gratitude. Maybe by singing simply because it feels good to sing. Maybe by resting without apology. Maybe by allowing winter to be savored rather than rushed through. Traditions do not demand perfect reenactment. They ask only to be remembered with tenderness. Thank you for joining this journey through memory, celebration, and winter wonder. If your eyes are growing heavy, you may drift peacefully into sleep. Until next time, may your winter be warm, your nights be gentle, and may the forgotten 12 days of Christmas find a home again in your heart.